Hello and welcome to a special 2018 LCS broadcast here at Bodied. We have Nefari0uss, who runs the CLG fan podcast, with us today, and we're going to be ranking some teams and talking about stuff. So, Nefari0uss, thanks for joining us.
Sure, no problem.
I'm Havoc, the host. I'm joined by Frozen Creek and Dr. Manhattan.
Hello.
Thank you guys for joining me.
Nefari0uss, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your podcast.
Sure. So I'm Nefari0uss, fairly well known on the CLG subreddit, and I'm the host of the CLG Faithful podcast. I run it every single week with my co-hosts, who unfortunately could not make it this week, and yeah, just here to shit talk TSM and Team Liquid.
Well, thanks for being on.
Yeah, and where can I find you guys on Twitter and such?
Oh yeah. So pretty much all of our branding is consolidated around CLG Faithful. So on Twitter we are at CLG Faithful. You could also email us with some feedback at clgfaithful@gmail.com. Yeah, those are basically the two most common ways in which you can find us. Otherwise, we're both fairly active on the CLG subreddit and CLG Discord. You can also message us on those as well.
Awesome. So
yeah, let's get right into it.
Yeah, so today's we're gonna do things just a little bit differently because we have a guest, and it's the first week of LCS in 2018. So we're gonna go ahead and do League of Legends first. Sorry, Havoc, but I think it's the best way to do it right now. So we'll start out. You started us out, Havoc.
Alright, so there have been some changes for the 2018 season. Franchising, this is the first year of franchising, and Bright decided to make some changes for viewability, however you want to view that. So matches will now be best of ones and played on Saturdays and Sundays. There's also no relegations, but a team that does have a lot of underperformance will get punished with fines or possible expulsion and other stupid things like that. But mostly, Riot is putting the monies over competitive integrity, moving it from a best of three to best of ones.
Yeah, I believe it was they had to be 9th or 10th for 4 splits in a row before they're kicked out.
I think they have to. I think teams have to vote on whether taking a team out or not. I think they can still be in, but they'll face fines and other kind of penalties if they continue to be last place or something.
So the amount of money that you get is directly correlated to your placement at the end of the split. So the higher you're seated, the higher you place, if you get first, you obviously get way more money than if you get last. That is definitely there's the financial incentive.
Yeah, that's probably a big deal for a lot of teams, and something that was probably taken into account when a lot of these rosters were made. Before we get into that, I do want to run down how the NALCS is looking. So, out of the 10 teams, there are 6 returning teams that everyone is familiar with: TSM, FlyQuest, Echo Fox, Team Liquid, CLG, and Cloud9. And there are 4 new teams that have made their way in. There is Clutch Gaming, which is owned by the Houston Rockets; Golden Guardians, which is owned by the Golden State Warriors; 100 Thieves, which is owned by the Cavaliers, I believe; and then Optic Gaming.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah, so that's about the basic rundown. So what do we want to do now? Do we want to go into rosters a little bit, or what are we thinking, guys?
I guess let's start with how do you guys feel about how the LCS is set up this year? The big changes obviously being best of one and franchising. I don't go too much into franchising because this is something we've covered extensively on the podcast. But Dr. Manhattan, we'll start with you. How do you feel about the big overarching changes as we move into the franchising era?
For one, I am relatively optimistic of it, due to the fact that The fact that they didn't completely like gut out the idea of a challenger and rather they just decided to go with something like an academy league in a sense where you're building up talent, and a lot of the rules they have in the academy league setup is essentially made so that teams can try to build as much talent as they possibly can. I think they put a rule where you can't have more than 2 quote unquote vets in one academy team, so it's something like an import rule, but it's going to be really interesting to see that. As for best of ones, I'm trying to wrap my head around it just because that's how naturally I am, even though ultimately I would much rather invest into a best of 3, but in order to attract some of these big money guys like the Cavs and the Bessemer group that apparently TSM is with now and all these other guys, I mean, they want viewership, so I can't get too mad at them for that. At least that's just my opinion.
I can. I mean, who's gonna want to watch like a Golden Guardians or like a Clutch Gaming or something if they're always gonna be in last place anyway? Like, I would skip those matches even when it was best of 3, just because they're gonna lose anyway. What's the point?
So that's the argument, right? Because it can go both ways in that. All right, well, it's just best of 1, and maybe you're thinking, all right, well, they're 2 terrible teams, and hopefully it's, they're Dignitas versus Renegade situation where they're just both laughably bad, that it's comical to watch. But it's also, less games of the worst teams, so if it's there, you're thinking, all right, whatever, it's just there, I'll just sit through it sort of thing and not pay as much attention. But it's still more overall viewership, because what happens is in the best of 3s, all the viewership would go to the top few teams. Usually it was TSM and Cloud9, and then a little bit with CLG and Team Liquid. And that makes up about, 85% of your actual viewer base? Some of the more established teams like Dignitas, they had some hardcore fans, but you don't really have anyone that was actually watching them. And if you look at what people who are advertisers and the people who are looking at the analytics, if you just want to straight up drive viewership, for a lot of people, they say best of 3s is a ton of games to watch, and that's true. And that's going to drive down overall viewership, right? We're probably a lot more hardcore fans than the average casual viewer who just goes and watches a game or two. Right? They just see it's on, they watch maybe the big teams, and that's it. And the idea here is that, okay, with having less games, then you have your big teams who might play the smaller teams. That helps give them some viewership as well.
Yeah, I think from Riot's standpoint, they have a definite reason to switch to a best of 1, but I think from a fan perspective and someone who really enjoys watching the games perspective, it is an obvious downgrade. My personal, if I was able to pick how they did the format for each split, I would pick a best of 2 because I thought that was probably like the best way that Riot was able to set up time slots and seeing teams play for a good amount of time each week. Because you could, see your favorite team on the screen for almost, for almost like 2 hours each match day. I mean, the ties weren't ideal, but it made a better, but it gave them an incentive to go for both games, but they'd also have a chance to experiment. Where in a best of 1, there's not as much time on the stage, which from a competitive standpoint, isn't ideal. So I don't like the switch. So in a conclusion, I don't like the switch personally, but I can see why they made the switch.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like best of 2 would have been a good overall trade-off, but
I loved it. Yeah, I thought it was great when you did that because you always knew games were going to start and end around this time, and with best of 3s, that was kind of like the big thing was if you were the second game, you didn't know if you were starting at 4:30, 5:30, or even 6. So that was like the one thing I didn't like about best of 3s, and I thought best of 2s kind of solved that. So that's just my 2 cents. Anybody else?
I do want to kind of talk about the competitive aspect of it because when we had best of ones before, it really, to me at least, it seemed like a lot of it was more just, oh, if a team gets lucky and wins, they can be higher than they really are, or they can be lower than they really are just because they had a bad week. If you look at last season in the summer, for best of one, if it was best of ones instead of best of threes, I believe TSM would have been ranked really low because they would lose a lot of their first games. And it just seems to really take away from the real competitiveness and like showing which team is able to adapt strategies and do all the stuff that you see in other regions and be more competitive and focused on the actual game than just, yeah, go in there and play for like an hour. Gotta be careful because if you lose, you'll screw your whole season over.
Yeah.
To further emphasize that point with TSM, right? Think about how many times they played Galio, right? And they got so much flack for playing Galio, and eventually they started to use it later on, and they were winning with it. But you look at the sheer number of games they lost with it, would they have been willing to experiment and try out Galio in best of ones? I don't think so.
Yeah.
It also just helps with strategy evolution, which Riot is now taking away somewhat.
I mean, every team could have just gone for Keen in the offseason. That's always an option.
And actually, to the point of the whole TSM thing, actually, I did like the maths because I was curious. Assuming that you just got the game ones from like spring 2017, where TSM won with Turtle, actually, if you just count the first game ones as like the best of one, TSM actually wouldn't have even made the playoffs, and Immortals would have been like third place. Like, that's kind of crazy to think about.
I'm sure if there was still best of ones, I'm sure TSM fans would be up in arms and Riot would immediately change it.
Yeah, that
honestly,
sounds pretty much like Riot.
The best explanation of that was when they changed the import rule, where they changed, I think, from 3 years to 5 years or something, right as Jensen was getting to 3 years, and right after Bjergsen had jumped that hump. So Bjergsen was grandfathered in, but Jensen had to wait 2 more years or something like that. That was like the perfect example of TSM just like getting their way entirely. But that's beside the point. So as we all know, the off season was kind of a shit show. Cloud9 ourselves, we lost our rookie jungler to the Golden Guardians, which I think caught everyone.
You mean we're betrayed by our rookie jungler?
Oh, we can get to that.
Well, you guys aren't happy with your off-season moves?
Yeah, and
I am frozen of them.
Hold on, and we all know that CLG also made some changes. So, Nefari0uss, can you run us down on some of the CLG changes? Sure. And first, what you feel about them, and then we can give some of our input.
Sure. So, returning to the lineup from CLG is going to be Darshan, Huhi, and Stixxay. And Omar God will return back to the Academy team. If you recall, CLG previously had Xmithy, and there was a trade that happened with Immortals for Dardoch. And Dardoch was on CLG. And despite CLG contending for first place with Dardoch, for whatever reason, he was benched in favor of Omar God and then eventually traded away to Team Liquid, literally a week after he publicly shit-talked about Team Liquid and management and players and coach. So Omar God comes in, and CLG goes and makes their playoff run with Omar God. They beat Envy and Team Dignitas, and then they have what I thought was a reasonably competitive best of 5 with Cloud9, given that Omar God was so new to the game, at least to professional play in LCS level. They lost that after four games, and that's that. So Omar God returns to the jungle, and they get Rainover, also from Team Liquid. Also previously of Immortals before that, and then Fnatic. Out in the bot lane is our captain, shot caller, and playmaker in Aframu. And in comes in the former TSM support, Biofrost, who was replaced by Mithy. So my overall view of it is that I think I have nothing against Omargard. I actually thought that he has a lot of potential to grow, but if you want a jungler that's going to fit COG's playstyle, COG's often favored the very supportive, control-heavy junglers with Xmithy, and Reignover is the perfect fit for that. And if he can return back to his former self on Immortals and Fnatic, then I think COG has an extremely strong lineup on the top side. Now looking at the bot side, so it's kind of interesting that Biofrost is replacing Aframu, and get to Aframu in just a second, but Stixxay and Biofrost are both the I guess the opposing halves of the Rush Hour bot lane. So Doublelift taught Biofrost, and then Aframu taught Stixxay. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Shanghai Moon bot lane does. I'm hoping to see good things about them. Both of them don't have their mentors now, so we'll see how well they do without them. Now CLG, if they're going to struggle, I think it's going to be with losing Aframu. So Aframu was the captain of the team, and he is the one who's going to make, in the end, the decisive play or the decisive call. And in those key moments, CLG may be lacking that particular voice or that sense of faith in which they had in Aframu because he was the veteran player, because he was the captain, and you could rely on him. So, for example, in one game where Team Liquid was playing against CLG, Team Liquid was going for, I believe it was the Elder Drake, and they already had Silver Drakes, and they were clearly at an advantage. And in the comms, Aframu straight up says, "Alright boys, this is our moment, this is our fight, this is where we win." And they execute the plays that they wanted to, they turn the game around, and then they win. And it's that kind of decisive leadership that you're going to need, and that's where they're going to struggle.
Yeah, I think that you made a lot of good points of how I feel as an outsider of CLG right now. I think switching to Biofrost, while I think there is a reason to do it, I don't know if it's like the best choice available, just because I think that Aframu is one of like those players in the same sense that High was, where their presence in the game just made it a completely different matchup, and it was impossible almost to game plan because these guys were so quick at thinking on their feet, and their team was so quick at reacting to them that it was hard to count them out of any game. But I do think that the way CLG ended last split, that if they were ever going to take out Aframu, that this was probably the best time, especially with bringing in Reignover.
Right, so they did actually give Aframu an offer, and there was actually an interview released today with Aframu by the Score Esports. I've not fully watched it yet, but he was talking about how it was very difficult to leave CLG. The offer was on the table. It was a very respectable and sizable offer. But Aframu also wanted to explore free agency since he hasn't done that in quite some time now. And according to Jacob Wolf of ESPN, it says that once Aframu mentioned that he wanted to explore free agency, COG decided to make a move as an org and secure support because of how fast that all of the various teams were going around and gathering players in the offseason. Many people would say this is the fastest and shortest offseason we've ever had in league history. So with that, as soon as it was confirmed that Biofrost was getting kicked from TSM, COG made a move from him, and given the free agents available, I think he's probably the best pickup that was there. If you consider that Smoothie was already contracted to Cloud9, Ole, I believe, was also there as well. So he was another potential option they could have gone with. And the other person I think might have worked is potentially Hakuho, but I believe he and Apollo were already signed to Clutch Gaming, although I could be wrong about that. And I'm actually not sure when Ole officially signed with Team Liquid. I just remember he was announced later on.
Yeah, I don't have.
Actually, no, he did
an exact
because
timeline.
Team Liquid bought out the contracts from Immortals,
Oh yeah, okay.
so he was already signed with it. So, given that, I think Biofrost was the best support available, and he's definitely a top tier support in NA.
Yeah, that's something I can agree with. Havoc or Doctor Manhattan, what do you guys think of CLG's off-season moves?
I mean, I agree with pretty much the points that you made. The roster moves that CLG made were, I think, needed and also very smart. You get someone who has played with CLG before, as well as someone who's very experienced and can be a leader in, the absence of Aphromo, and you have a young support who is getting better and getting better all the time, and is just good in their own right. So I think this is a pretty good move. One thing that I do kind of have into question is how Stixxay will perform with Biofrost, because Stixxay had kind of a lackluster finish to the summer season, and I'm curious to see how Stixxay will perform. I'm actually not worried about Huhi, because Huhi has improved leaps and bounds since he first started on CLG way back. So I think their mid lane troubles are over. Huhi is now a top mid laner who can compete with the best of them. I think now CLG's troubles will probably be in the top lane, since Darshan has been playing for a while and might be a bit set in his ways, and you have Stixxay, who has had a lot of ups and downs in terms of performance.
Yes. So I guess that kind of takes us to, what do you think are the strong parts of this CLG roster, and what do you think are the weak parts?
So I'd say the strong parts are definitely the solo lanes. Darshan is, in my opinion, a top 3 top laner in NA. I think it was actually criminal that he didn't get top 3 last split. I guess looking at it now, there's a ton of talent in there, and maybe what, top 5, top 6 is super stacked. So you have Someday, Huni, Impact, Hanser, Darshan, and Flame. So that's 6 incredibly good top laners. They're all very close to each other in skill. You look at Huhi, I think he's definitively a top 3 mid laner in NA. The only people I think you could say are better than him are Jensen and Bjergsen. Now, I look at the jungle. We all know what Reignover was, and what kind of monster he was with Huni back in Fnatic and on Immortals. Now, Darshan may not be as crazy as Huni, but he's still a carry top laner, and if they can work well together, you should expect to see good results there. Funnily enough, so people started asking Reignover what the difference is between, or what his former teams were like, and he's like, "Oh yeah, well, Fnatic and Immortals had really good communication. What about Team Liquid? I thought you said teams." Like, Team Liquid just wasn't a team. He doesn't really consider that. He doesn't even want to think about that part of his life. It was apparently that bad. And judging by how that team functioned, I think I can believe that. I think if there is a potential downside, it's going to be their bot lane, just because I have no idea what to expect from them. Based on some of the streams, it looks like Stixxay and Biofrost should be fine. Hopefully it's a strong lane dominant team. And the question is, like I said, I think the lack of leadership might be where CLG somewhat falls apart, because CLG has never been the team to just outlane you and then win from there. They've always been the team to outmacro you. And I think that maybe they don't end this split in first place. Something may change during playoffs, whatever. But I think that come spring split, this is a team that will definitely be challenging, and they should be making Worlds this year, based on just the rosters alone.
I don't think I can disagree with that. I think that on paper, this team looks really strong. My only worry is this a good enough team on paper to truly make a mark? Because it almost kind of feels like a half rebuild, half win now roster in a way. I think we do know that Reignover has the quality in him. Darshan is one of the best top laners in NA, even if he's like rated 5th. Like, he's still in a different class than the top laners who are below him. I think it just says a lot more about the top lane competition. And who he, I think you were here when I quoted myself as saying who he's like the worst mid laner in NA. There's something 2 years ago.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then
It was last year, I think.
yeah,
But
he
go on.
dramatically improved. He's a completely different person at this point, and I think this is more of a short-term loss, like meaning they're gonna struggle for a couple weeks, but it's gonna be an improvement over the whole split. And that I think
Yep.
what would have been an interesting choice for them would have been to pick up Licorice and kick Darshan, because then they would have had like a pretty good, a decent team now, and they would have been a really good rebuild team. But that's just something that I would find interesting, I guess, because I don't think it makes them better in the short term.
I think one advantage of having both Darshan and Huhi right now is that they're your two veteran players of CLG along with Stixay. But in terms of vocal voices, so it's believed Huhi will be shot calling. And Darshan, I would presume, is captain due to tenure. He's been on the team the longest now.
How do you guys feel about a CLG? Do you guys think that this is an improvement on their last roster? And where do you kind of feel this team facing, or feel this team ending up at?
I think this team is definitely top 4. I remember when they announced CLG that the pickup of Biofrost, I actually thought of just their playstyles and the fact that actually, if you guys watched the narrative wake with Double Lift, he basically commented on like, what does he think about Biofrost playing with 6A now? And he basically said, dude, they're a match made in heaven. Like, basically it's just both they're like me playing with Biofrost. It's just like I know exactly how he likes to play, and I remember like when Stixay was like I think he was like in the academy or like on CLG Black back in like 2015 when Double was still on there. Like, I remember like so take that with a grain of salt because that was years ago, but like I remember him playing a style that would very much complement Biofrost style. So like medium key, don't like sleep on that bot lane. They're almost perfect for each other. And yeah, I think that's
Rush Hour Part 2.
basically basically the baby that is Rush Hour. But yeah, I think that this team is definitely one you don't want to sleep on. And again, everyone's gonna go towards leadership and the identity of the team. I think that someone like Huhi, if he's as vocal as they say he is, like we'll see how he does. He completely went from 0 to 100 between the course of a single split, where he went from what was arguably the worst mid laner in NA in spring to now like a top 3 mid laner, and that's awesome to see. But Darshan, like, is also in a top class of top laners. He's been that way for a good amount of time at this point. And Reignover, I mean, you can point at Team Liquid's Team Liquid's failures like in 2017, but it was just a big dumpster fire. That's like to pick on just a little part of it, which is like Reignover in hindsight is just like a little twig in terms of how big of a dumpster fire Team Liquid was in 2017. So
to put it in perspective, they took Dardoch back after he publicly shit talked them a week before that.
Yeah, so like
come on.
I think it was it was a much bigger picture, and I don't really think it's fair to pin that all on Reignover. But I mean, we've seen rosters that like legitimately, like CLG's like again, they're that team that just they never really like on paper they're sometimes not the most impressive in terms of like all these big blockbuster superstar moves that they get picked up in the offseason, and yet they always seem to improve. I mean, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts in terms of CLG. So yeah, I'm excited for them.
One thing I love is how some TSM fans were to talk on Reddit about how Biofrost was the best support in NA, and now he's on TSM. Yeah, I don't know. He's kind of mediocre. He'll probably do all right. Oh, it's probably TSM actually covering up for him. Like, come on, which one is it? You gotta pick one or the other.
Oh,
at least be consistent.
It was the same way during Rift Rivals when they were bragging about how they completely shit on Sven and Mithy, and now they're all over them. I mean, so I tend to take their opinions with a grain of salt.
All right. Well, hopefully CLG can impress and dazzle this season. But moving on to the other team in this joint venture, which is Cloud9, the roster did change a little bit. Impact and Ray left in the top lane to go to different teams, and Contractz, traitor, left to join Golden Guardians. We replaced them with some pretty capable people, at least I think. We have Licorice in the top lane, a upcoming rookie who has been known to get a lot of solo kills on Impact specifically. And Sven Skaren has found the light. He had looked up into the clouds. He said, hey, that one looks like a bunch of nines grouped together, and we have picked him up to join Jensen, Sneaky, and Smoothie as they captain this ship towards another year of League of Legends fun.
I think he's just invading and he got stuck. He's invading, and then TSM's like, turn the ship around.
He's hiding in the bush.
Turn the ship around. Okay, go.
If I don't move, they'll think I'm just on their team, and they won't attack me.
He's your ward now.
Yeah, he's literally became just a pink ward in the opposing team's jungle.
So, in all seriousness, I think if you look at just the roster names on paper, it's a bunch of side grades. You still have a very strong core from mid and bot lane, but Sven Skaren, he can be a very good jungler. He was this massive monster of a carry jungler when he first joined TSM, and previously on SK before he got turned into a mobile ward bot that just invades and dies. Traveling around the same area as a bunch of other TSM junglers, but Licorice, I actually didn't watch too much of the academy teams, so I can't say very much about Licorice. I've seen a lot of hype coming up for him, so I think the big thing for Cloud9, the big question mark is going to be, how does Licorice perform? You generally know how Sven's going to play. You assume that Sven and Jensen will do pretty well. It's a very strong mid laner who's always going to be pushing in, enable Sven Skaren to do a bunch of roams and invades. Hopefully that works out well for them. So going back to Licorice, right? If he does well, and because Cloud9 would let Impact, from what I would see, just be this rock in the top lane, and sometimes just 1v2, and then you're like, how did he do that? I don't know. He just killed them both. So maybe they have to change their playstyle. Maybe Licorice can be that new rock that they need, but if he falters or doesn't do well, I think that's when Cloud9 will run into some troubles.
I think with Licorice, I think Cloud9 is looking to put pressure away from the other lanes to try to carry. Because I think before with Impact was really good at tanks, but he couldn't really play the carry champions as well as like Ray could, for example. And Ray had his own issues. But with Impact playing, a lot of it was on Jensen and sometimes Sneaky. But with putting Licorice in, Licorice can play both. He seems to be pretty good at tanks, and he also seems to really pop off on carries. So I think with this, Reaper is saying, okay, we can take the ball and we can run it through another area. So Jensen doesn't have to necessarily put on his carry pants that day and go through the stress of trying to drag his team kicking and streaming across the finish line. And I think that's perfectly normal. If you've saw an interview that Jensen did with Thorin, I can't remember the show that it was, but he talked a little bit about Licorice and Sven Skaren.
It was Narrative Wake.
I'm sorry?
It was Narrative Wake.
Yes,
I watched that episode. Yep.
Yeah. So he said with Licorice that C9 would always scrim E United before they had a game to kind of warm themselves up, and Licorice would always solo kill Impact, like almost like clockwork, like it just happened constantly. And so I think that was something that at least impressed Cloud9 in terms of just, casual scrim games. But also with Svenskeren, he said that they did some practice with him, and Jensen said it just clicked immediately. There was a lot more communication. Everything just felt, fluid, and it felt right. So I think that also with these roster pickups, Reaper wants to make sure that Jensen is comfortable to enable him to do better, which makes sense since he is the star player and he's the one that Cloud9 kind of looks to a lot of the time. So I think that with these roster moves in mind, it all makes sense, but I think that there's not a lot of data to go on, so everyone's kind of iffy on how well Cloud9 will actually do.
Okay. So it sounds like you agree with me that the big question mark is Licorice.
Yes. Yes.
I have a hard time placing it. Personally, I'll let Dr. Manhattan go after me, but I think when Contractz came into the team, we kind of pointed him as the question mark of the potential of this team. But if you look at the Challengers series for Contractz and for Licorice, if you compare them to their position, like Licorice to other top laners and Contractz to the other junglers, they kind of performed at similar levels compared to their counterparts. So I'm not exactly sure that I feel like Licorice is too big of a worry. I don't think he's going to be a star player this year by any means, but I think we can count on him being a mini Darshan in a way where he's someone that you can rely on to do what you need at any point during the game, but you might not expect him to carry every game like you might with Jensen. And I still, for me, my biggest worry is Svenskeren, because he dies a lot. He doesn't ward outrageously well. His early jungling pathing isn't anything special. And I think that this team is gonna live and die by how Svenskeren and Jensen work around each other. And I don't know that Svenskeren is even a side graded Contractz. If I were to put a number on it, I would say it would be a 10% downgrade on how Contractz was for me personally.
Well, I think to be fair on your point about Svenskeren, that was all under TSM strategy.
Yeah,
we don't know how he's going to play under Cloud9 and Cloud9 strategy. They may, because they play junglers completely differently than TSM does.
Yeah,
everyone does.
But
and everyone knows what happens to junglers after like a split or two under TSM.
Yeah, but we're still a team.
Not to mention, we have the secret weapon in Lulex.
The pathing god.
Yeah, but we're still a team focused around mid. We rely our top laner to survive on an island, just like TSM mostly does. And we didn't quite rely on bot lane as much as TSM did, but I think that there are comparisons to make, and I don't think that Svenskeren is going to be some breakout star that we didn't see on TSM. I mean, I think that there are plenty of scenarios where he's going to be better now, and I would even say that it would be more likely that he would be better now than on TSM, but I don't think that he's going to be a reasonable upgrade on what Contractz was. And I think a lot of that is due to both of them and what happened in that quick week of the off season when Contractz ended.
So I heard top lane's on an island, rely on mid lane, and bot lane's just sort of there. So you guys are telling me you're the new TSM. You're Jensen in the 4 words? Is that what to expect next?
Oh God, no.
A lot less egos. And more weebs.
And a lot more memes.
And sexier cosplays.
Meme 9, of course.
And sexier made Urgot cosplays.
Please no.
Alright, Manhattan, what do you think?
I mean, I would say I'm still on the board that think I have to agree with Havoc that I think the bigger question mark would probably have to be Licorice in the sense where I mean I'm super confident in the way Svenskeren played. I mean the difference between Licorice and Svenskeren is the fact that Svenskeren has at least somewhat of a track record. I mean we're talking about a guy who has 3 consecutive titles in NA, has been to 4 of them in NA, and actually
And SK.
yeah, and went to 1 in SK as well. So we're talking about a guy who's been to the finals 5 times, has gone to Worlds 3 times. I mean, this is a guy with a proven track record. And Licorice, I mean...
He boosted TSM in Season 3 at Worlds, remember?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. But, like, Licorice, and this is the comparison to Licorice and Contractz is... I'm not going to say apples to oranges, but it's a bit different. But it's a bit different for the better, because you got to remember that Contractz was on the team that everyone was complaining about with Cloud9 Challenger and how they kind of boosted an entire like Challenger team into the LCS, which, let's be honest, they kind of did. But there was no rule against it, so whatever. This is a guy who played with a dandy that looked nothing like he did on Samsung White, GBM who's been tossed around the league scene God knows how many times.
He's in Turkey now.
Yeah. It's hard to believe that many Koreans in Turkey now. And then you have Deftly, who's now a rookie on Golden Guardians, and Zazel, who's on our academy team currently, and he still managed to do well under a very weird-looking team. So now that he has a more structured backup like Cloud9, and he has a top lane, he has a coach who's a former top laner in Reapered, like he's probably the biggest question mark and, in my opinion, the most important player on this roster in terms of how he's going to push the momentum. I do have a lot of expectations for this guy, and I'm excited to see him.
So, from an outsider perspective, Nefari0uss, what do you think about this team? Do you think that we are on equal footing to what we were last split? Do you think we've upgraded or downgraded or?
I think Cloud9 side graded, and then Team Liquid shot up above them. I think I would place CLG above them in my expectations. I would probably put Cloud9 as 4th place. I'm looking at some of the other rosters. Maybe Clutch Gaming or 100 Thieves or whatever will make playoff runs, but I think Cloud9 has enough experience with the players that they have, and a little bit of synergy with the existing players, and the infrastructure and the backing that they should be very solid and competitive. Just to make one final note on Licorice, my main concern with him is that, yes, he may have done well in the academy teams, but now he's up against LCS players, and you look at the top lane talent in North America, you have Someday, legendary player from Korea. You have Huni, very well-known player, won titles on Fnatic, and was recently on SK Telecom. You have Flame, another extremely well-known talented player from Korea. You have Impact, you guys know all about him, and he's a world champion. You have Hanser, one of the best top laners in NA. You have Darshan, who I personally believe is one of the best top laners in NA. And that leaves Licorice, Lorlo, and Zig. And Lorlo and Zig have not really impressed me, but you look at the top 6, and I think that is a very difficult club to break into. So even if he is very good, I think just the sheer talent there will make it difficult for them.
I think a lot of it has to do with if he can hold his own and come out of matchups doing how he should. Like if he's playing a Maokai, not come out too far behind. If he's playing Camille, right, come out ahead. And I think he's at a position where he can do that in most matchups. Just if you look kind of and compare statistics among Challenger Series players the past couple splits, you can kind of see the players that are actually going to make an impact in LCS, and most of the time they kind of do because they stick out so far. And I think Licorice is kind of one of those special players where he has an ability to make the jump to an LCS squad, and he's been on Cloud9 before kind of as a backup, so he's not new to the organization or anything. So I'm actually happy with a Licorice. I don't think losing Impact was ideal, and I think it would be perfect to have a split of them kind of splitting back and forth like Impact and Ray kind of did. But I'm not too upset with how the Licorice situation kind of pulled out. But we've ran for quite a long time, so I'll let Havoc take it from here to slowly wind down the League of Legends talk.
Yeah, so I think yeah. So sorry, mind drew a blank for a second. Yeah. So the next topic that I want to touch on just for a tiny bit is the contract situation. So not contracts noun, contracts proper noun. Where he left Cloud9 even though he agreed to sign like a 3-year contract, and he backed out at the last minute, and Jack was like, all right, I'll try to help you find a team. And he's like, okay, Golden Gardens will take you. Get out of here. What is your opinions really quickly on that subject? I kind of honestly feel like it's kind of a stab in the back, because you were doing well, you were on a successful team, your trajectory is looking up and up, but you wanna leave all that for a newer organization so you can work on other stuff. It just seems kind of puzzling to me personally.
Money.
Well, I'll let Dr. Manhattan go first, because I do have a take on this.
It's kind of interesting. Again, was really, first of all, like almost every Cloud9 fan was in shock when we got that article from ESPN saying like sources Cloud9 Contractz to join Golden Guard. It's like I was in absolute shock, because I thought like everything was going super well. Like after Worlds, it's just like we have a good core, and then I heard that, I'm like, oh my god, like, and it was even more shocking when it turns out that like right after that happened, we signed Svenskeren and Wiggly, so it's just like, yep, he's pretty much gone. And then he released his statement, which I was waiting for, because I'm just like, there has to be a reason. And while I wouldn't have been too disappointed in the fact if he said the word money, I'm pretty sure that was a big factor. But then I read his tweet longer, I'm just like, okay, like, he kind of had cold feet, and he knew the risk that was involved in, saying he wanted to be a free agent. First of all, props to Cloud9 for, doing the right thing and just, like, as they usually do, and help these guys find other orgs. But he said the main thing that he wanted to work on was just, he didn't want to just, I don't want to say the word, I don't want to use the word egotistical, that's really bad, because he's not. But it's just like, he wanted to work on something that he felt like he lacked in, and he was very aware of it, and he wanted to become a leader, and he felt like being under High, like, that's kind of something you should learn. Plus, he's worked with High in the past before, so, I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing. Do I still have some sort of, like, kind of, like, do I look back at it and Contractz and saying, like, we could have done great things together? Like that scene, if you ever watched that Michael Fassbender Steve Jobs movie, like, that's how I feel like we could have done great things together, man. Like, but I mean, he knew what he knew what he signed up for, and I'm trying not to be too upset about it. Plus, we have a new jungler now, and hopefully things will work out great.
Yeah, I think this was kind of like the Afromus situation that Nefari0uss was talking about, where he had the ability to stay on the team, and then he decided to take a dip into the free agent market, but there wasn't enough time to cut them any slack. So Cloud9 and Jack just made a quick decision to sign a jungler. And I think at the end of the day, Contractz kind of got caught with his pants down. And I guess he didn't quite expect that to happen. Or I don't think he would have jumped into the free agent market. And I still don't think he should have came out and said anything about why he left Cloud9, because in my opinion of what I read, he got caught with his pants down, and this could have all been solved if he had just stuck to the contract that he was offered while he was already contracted to Cloud9 for 2 more years. But Jack was good enough to offer him a second contract for 3 more years worth more money. And if I want to go super cynical, I think Jack purposely picked a team like Golden Guardians to trade him to because they're not exactly a threat to the top 5, I don't think. And that might have been a purposeful decision by him. But I think at the end of the day, it's also important to remember that Contractz is still really young. He's still at the age that people are committing to colleges for sports, and that it's hard to deflame them and call them out on Twitter and Facebook and stuff based on some of the decisions that they make. Like, this could have been one of the biggest and hardest decisions of Contractz' life up until this point. So I want to give him some flack. I don't think it's totally fair just because he's in a position that I don't think I ever could have seen myself in 8 years ago at the age of 18. Yes, I'm 26. So I give him credit for trying to flex his muscle, but I'm hoping that he learned the lesson of not getting caught with his pants down again. But the only thing that sucks kind of about it is that he's still so young, and he's probably not going to make it back to Cloud9 ever again. But he's always going to be in NA terrorizing us.
So go ahead.
So that's kind of just how I feel about it. It sucks, but it happens. He's young. That's about it. So I'll let you say what you were going to say, but then let's move on to our final predictions for the year.
Sure. I haven't followed the situation too closely just because it wasn't of a huge topic for me. Going back to the off season, you brought up again how quickly it moved. There was an interview done to Nick Allen. Currently, he's the one leading the ship, CLG, and he was talking about how they were actually somewhat surprised at just how fast some of these new NBA-backed teams were moving to sign rosters. And it seemed to be something that a lot of the currently existing teams just did not really expect. People were actually paying good amount of money to talk to players, even while they were still on contract. I mean, TSM paid G2 money to talk to Sven and Mithy while they were still under contract. So people were moving extremely fast. That definitely could have played a big role in it. Other than that, I don't really have too much to say on it. Like I said, I didn't really follow the situation that much. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to team predictions. So everyone kind of looked at the rosters that had been filled out and then ranked it from 1 to 10. You know how this. Everyone should know how this works. I don't think I have to explain the intricacies. But Dr. Manhattan, let's start with you and go down your prediction list and why.
All right, I'm gonna start off with my top one, which was I had TL doing the best. I think that a lot of even though it's kind of like I think that they kept a lot of the core of Immortals, which is very interesting. Not to mention they got a vocal player like Doublelift, and they got a very solid guy like Impact. As somebody who loved watching it for the past 2 years, I'm stoked to see him go on a really good team like them. Actually, the only question I really have on that team is probably Olay. And the more I was watching Narrative Wake, it was kind of like reassuring my doubts that I had in him, in which he's good, but like a lot of what he's good at is just being like crazy and like in your face and stuff like that. So there's that. After that, I had TSM. I think that there's going to be a lot of growing pains with them, and I actually am in the camp that I wasn't terribly impressed by Mike Young. Actually, I was in the camp that actually thought Niski should have won Rookie of the Split that year. But oh well. CLG, again, a team that, like, I think that with the pickups, and I think that the bot lane will mesh pretty well. Again, only question is leadership on that one. Fourth, I have Cloud9. Simply because of the fact that I still have yet to really tap into Licorice's potential, but I'm gonna just make a safe bet and say that they're most likely top 4. Fifth, I had 100 Thieves. I think that the main issue is that, with the exception of Meteos and Ryu, who barely played together, there's no pre-existing synergies on this team. Someday takes a while to adapt to a few things. We saw it on Dignitas. Not to mention, Cody's Sun isn't the most impressive AD carry that you could get, but, they did what they could. After that, Clutch Gaming. You kept a lot of the core with Lyra, the Envious core with Lyra, Apollo, and Hakuho. Solo, I think, is going to be the point where a lot of people are going to expose, and I didn't think he was the most impressive top laner in the Challenger series. They did get Febivin, who I've watched for years since he was on Fnatic, and I loved him even more in H2K. So that's going to be interesting to see how, if he's the X factor that team can get to break top 4. But I'll put him at 6th. And also the coach D Lim. I mean, he's very questionable to say the least. 7, I put Echo Fox. Again, I think this is the story that Mark Z said on his power rankings, but I do agree that this is a team that's either going to hit a home run and just crush it, or just completely implode on themselves. I have no idea where the hell to put this team. You got Dardoch, Phoenix, Huni, Adrian, and Altec. I think the bot lane's pretty solid. Mid lane's okay. Top lane's pretty good. Obviously, people can question Dardoch a lot for within reason, but that's going to be the big question that everyone has. After Echo Fox, I had FlyQuest. Really odd team, to say the least. I do like Stunt, and I do like Turtle, and I think that they're both going to do pretty well. Fly is basically just a really weird version of Huhi. Well, back early days of Huhi. The Aurelion Soul and more defensive mids and stuff like that. 9th, I put Golden Guardians. I think that Hai is a player that has shown that he can do well with certain teams, and he's a really good shot caller. My only question is, again, how exposable are Lorlo and Matt, and the lack of pre-existing synergies outside of Contractz and Pi. And you have Matt and Lorlo, but I don't see any innate synergies in that one. And finally, Optic Gaming. It's just, I don't see the identity of what Optic Gaming can do. Zig has a very limited champion pool and really only does well with bruiser carry-ish type champions. Acadian's not bad. You have Power of Euros, but you have Power of Evil, who wasn't bad, but I don't think he's kind of guy you can put all your chips on. And then Arrow and Lemonation just felt like they just put together a bot lane that with whatever they could. But Arrow's not bad, but I'm gonna put them at last.
Okay. All right. Some bold predictions, some expected. But Frozen, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure on how I feel about the top of the table. I think on paper the best 3 teams ideologically, I guess, are Team Liquid, TSM, and CLG. I kind of put them in an order to how I think that they're going to finish based on how they start the season and end the season. So I think Team Liquid is going to be consistently the best team throughout the split, just based on the fact that they have so much talent that they're going to be able to win early and also mesh better and win late. Same with TSM, though I do have questions about how Mithy and Mike Young are going to perform during the regular season, and I think that they could falter to 3rd and maybe even 4th. CLG at 3rd, Cloud9 at 4th. I don't think that they made the necessary upgrades or changes to place any better than they did last split. Next, 100 Thieves, Clutch Gaming, Optic, Echo Fox, Golden Guardians, and FlyQuest. So I was super high on Optic compared to you guys.
This is your brain, and this is your brain on Optic.
Let me explain why.
Don't do Optic.
I think Acadian is a really good jungler. I've been really high on him since I've seen him in Challenger Series. He came out the same year as Contractz did. And he was my Rookie of the Year that year over Contractz, over... I can't remember who else came out that year. So I'm really high on Acadian. I've always been a huge Power of Evil slut, so I'm really high on him. And I believe that Arrow is a really good ADC. I don't think he's a top-tier ADC, but I think that together Arrow, Power of Evil, and Acadian can push this team into a better position than dead last. Though I do have worries about Lemon Nation. So my biggest concern is Lemon Nation. But I think that this team actually has a pretty decent roster.
Alright. Well, my list probably isn't that too surprising. My top 4 can be shipped around because I think it's very Liquid. Haha. Team Liquid is at first. I put TSM at second just because they have the threat of their bot lane, but I'm actually not too impressed by Sven and Mithy from what I've seen from G2. Sven is actually a definitive KDA player, and Mithy can just tilt off the face of the earth and just make the dumbest plays sometimes. So I think that they'll actually kind of struggle along with Mike Young, who really didn't look that great. Cloud9's at third. I think that they can pull it off and they can pull it together and they can do what they usually do with Jensen and the rest. CLG's at fourth. 100 Thieves is at fifth, and I think that they can do great with their roster, but I think that at the same time they have a lot of old dogs and you can't teach them new tricks. You have Meteos, Someday, Ryu, Aframu, all players that have well been settled into their bad habits, and because of this, I think that they will sometimes just fall because they can't adapt as well or pick up new strategies or tricks that newer players can do. Echo Fox at 6. This is definitely a war of personalities. You have Huni, Dardak, and Phoenix, who have all tilted and clashed with each other at some points or another on their respective teams. And I think it's just a ticking time bomb. For 7th, FlyQuest. 8th, I put Golden Guardians. They could do well since they do have like Contractz and High, but with Lorlo and Nat, I don't think they're going to get very far. 9, I put Clutch Gaming. I don't think Clutch has a chance. I think that their roster is okay individual players, but I don't think that they can come together and do anything super spectacular. And then I put Optic dead last. They're not going anywhere. So Nefari0uss, last but not least, what is your prediction?
All right. So, I did the 1 through 10 just like you guys, but I'm gonna give more of a tiers than give that order. So, I think your top tiers are gonna be your TSM, Team Liquid, and CLG. Liquid, TSM, CLG in that order for the top 3. And then I think the next set of tiers you have in strength is gonna be Cloud9, 100 Thieves, and potentially Clutch Gaming. So 100 Thieves I look at and I see a roster full of people, and some days solid. I think Aframu is solid. I think Cody Sun under Aframu will do really well. And the big question mark I have is Ryu and Meteos. And Meteos has incredible game sense, but there was some motivation issues with him playing on Phoenix 1, and same thing for Ryu. So depending on how they play and how their motivation plays out, if they work well together, it could be a strong team. If it doesn't, then they have problems there. Clutch Gaming. Clutch Gaming is basically Team Envy. You can see the spirit of Team Envy with Lyra, Apollo Hako, who I all think are solid. If Febiven works out, you have a pretty good core for the team. And the big question mark then is Solo, who's, there. And can he get into the upper echelon of top laners? That remains to be seen. I think they also have Levi in their academy roster, but if they were to bring him, actually, it may not have been him. It's one of the teams that they have Levi in the academy roster, and if they bring him, they need to bring in NA mid, and that becomes an issue. So I have to double check on that one. So you have that, and then the next set I have Echo Fox is just out here in this limbo at 7th place, and the reason for that is I look at Echo Fox and I think, man, I don't know what to expect with this team. And I don't think anyone does. Huni, you know what Huni's gonna do. He's gonna go crazy. He's trying to go ham, and Dardock's probably gonna try to do the same. I've personally never rated Phoenix on anything other than Azir. A lot of Team Liquid fans will tell me I'm wrong, but I think he's be mid-tier, solid mid-tier, strong laner, and I'll take an Adrian or just there. I don't rate them particularly highly. So I look at that and I think if they're going to win games, it's going to be off their top side of the map just exploding and just absolutely running away with the game. And in best of ones, that's entirely possible. Following that, I have Golden Guardians at 8th, but I think Golden Guardians is an interesting project. I actually really like the fact that it's an all-NA lineup, and looking at it, so you have Lorlo, Contractz, High, Definitely Matt. We're not sure what to expect from Definitely. Lorlo and Matt are going to be trying to have a bit of redemption after the time on Team Liquid. And I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with High and Contractz. So we know High can basically, he's basically the cheat code to getting your way up through LCS. He'll go and he'll do some craziness and he'll pull through the team. Now, they're coached by Loco and I actually think Locodoco's a pretty good coach, especially when you give him rookies to work with. There was a season on Team Liquid where they were a game away from making the finals, which was spoiled to them by CLG, and they had 3 rookies that split. I think Locodoco, he's also done some pretty good work on TSM. I mean, he's got some titles to his name there. So you give him rookies, I think that come spring, they could definitely be a fairly scary roster if things come together and get playoff. I look at last FlyQuest and Optic, and okay, great. FlyQuest has Flame. He still had some issues working well with his teammates on Immortals. I don't know what to expect from Onda. Fly is there. Great, he can play Aurelion Soul, but he's not Huhi, so who cares? And then Wild Turtle, he's going to flash forward and do crazy things, and sometimes they're going to work out really well. And stunts there, I guess. I don't know, I can't get myself hyped around FlyQuest. I don't know what to expect with them. And then last, and in this case, probably the least, I look at Optic Gaming, and it's hard for me to get excited about anything on Optic Gaming. I mean, maybe Power of Evil had a great run at Worlds on Misfits. Acadian is a strong carry jungler, so he could do something there. Arrow did put up some MVP performances on Phoenix 1, so in theory you have that going for them. But I just look at their roster, I just don't know how well that's going to work together, especially with Lemonation not being, a mechanical god, let's just say. He might have the game knowledge, but Arrow might want to dominate lane, and then Lemonation may not, or they may not be able to with that. I don't see Zig dominating lane. Power of Evil, I think he'll be mid-tier in NA. And Cadian, could do something. It is best of ones, so you never know what's going to happen with any of these rosters. But it's just really hard for me to get excited about Optic and FlyQuest. So yeah, that's my overall rundown.
All right, sounds good.
One last
I think
thing.
Sorry.
One last thing before you leave. I need a prediction for our Saturday match between Cloud9 and CLG at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Give me a quick prediction, then we're kicking you off so we can finish our version of the podcast.
CLG's gonna blow Cloud9 out of the water.
All right, get the fuck out of here.
Damn right.
All right, I
didn't like you guys anyways.
All right, I gave.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm just really looking forward to watching some LCS again.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
Preach it.
Likewise.
Yeah, so that should.
Oh, and I really hope Team Liquid and TSM just crumble. That would be so much fun to watch.
I would love to see TSM just straight up fall. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see them just crumble.
Nothing would please me more.
Yeah. So I think that's
I think that's all we have.
Yeah, I think that's about it. So we are going to finish up the rest of our Cloud9 podcast with other esports. Thank you for being on here, Nefari0uss. You will get this podcast also to post in your feed if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look for it tomorrow, I think. So thank you for showing up.
Hopefully we can post it tomorrow and both of our fans can all enjoy it. So
give us
with that, I guess I'm out.
Give us one last reminder where we can find you and where we can find the podcast if we are interested. If any of our psychotic Cloud9 fans are interested.
So we post every week on the CLG subreddit. Just search for CLG Faithful Podcast. And if you want to find us on Twitter, it's just at CLG Faithful. Same thing if you want to contact us by email, it's clgfaithful@gmail.com. And you could also find me on Twitter at Nefari0uss. So with that, guess I'm out.
All right.
See ya.
Thank you for showing up.
Thanks for coming on.
Have a good rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you. All right. So now that now that he's gone, let's do our actual predictions for this weekend.
Our actual match predictions?
Yeah, we have a game on Saturday, January 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time against CLG. Call it. We'll start with Dr. Manhattan.
I just want to see. I actually want to see the best League of Legends played, but I feel like this is going to be the debut that we're looking for. We saw Contractz debut pretty well last year, so I'm expecting that level of debut against with Licorice against Darshan. So I say, even though it's going to be somewhat close, like within mid game, we're going to take this one over CLG.
I think so too. I wish I could say a 2-1, but oh shit. Since it's the best one, it's harder to pick. I guess I'm going to say
just pick us, you fool.
1-0, because
is there a wrong answer?
Fuck anybody else.
Cloud9's gonna crush it. Darshan is he's more like Darsh has been. Rainover's about to get rained over, and who he is
poopy.
I can't think of a good one for the rest.
Who he is poopy.
We're gonna win. Yeah, yes. We're gonna beat him. That's.
Yeah, fuck him.
That's how I say about that.
All right.
We're also gonna be.
Oh, we also have a Sunday game.
Yeah.
Against Golden Guardians at 8
we're
p.m.
gonna be
Eastern
playing
Standard Time. Approximately. These are approximate times. Havoc, what do you think about this game?
It's time for some payback. Contractz messed up our team, so we're gonna mess up his. Lorlo will not be able to compete with Licorice. High is good, but Jensen is better. Definitely and Matt is literally the scraps from the signings table, and Sneaky and Smoothie are gonna just make them regret ever playing the game. And Contractz can only sit back and watch helplessly as his team crumbles around him and dies.
Yeah.
I think Cloud9 stomps them.
Yeah, the spot lane's a joke. So I'm gonna have us a 2-0 weekend. Dr. Manhattan.
We could have done great things together, Contractz, but now you've joined the Golden Guardians. But it's okay. We'll try not to hurt you too bad, but I think that we should wipe the floor with this team. I think that, yeah, this bot lane shouldn't have anything on ours, and especially due to the fact that I'm feeling more confident in our bot lane, considering, if you watch the narrative wake, Loco Doco actually truly believes that Smoothie is the best all-around support in the league. I hope that he lives up to that word, and I know he can.
Yeah, any over or unders on when the first Golden Guardian players goes full Draymond Green and kicks someone in the nuts?
It's gonna be different.
No. I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither. I don't think that's going to happen. All right, Havoc, can you finish us up with the non-LCS related esports? Give us a run.
Yes, I can do that really quick. So
jump in.
I'm going to go through this kind of fast. But so Rocket League played at something called the Open Qualifier for the Ting Open Tournament. I think it's an open tournament, so like pretty much if you had a Rocket League team, you could just enter and not, you didn't have to be a big organization or anything. You could just go and play. But they completely wiped the floor with the competition. It was actually laughable, especially since most of it was off stream. But they kept 2-0ing after 2-0ing after 2-0ing. And they played against Equinox, and they only dropped one game. So they won 3-1 in the qualifier finals. So they will be going on to the tournament. They can, they don't have to worry about any more qualifiers or anything. And I think that'll happen in February. So for Smash 4, moving on, Ally participated at PAX South. He did really good in the group stage. He actually went 6-1, I think, which is pretty impressive considering Ally was been kind of struggling. I thought he was about to turn over a new leaf, but then he got into the bracket stage, and Ally, you played yourself again. He lost 2-3 to Captain Zach, and then dropping down to losers. He had to play Samsora, and he lost 1-3. So more struggles coming out from Ally. Unsure what he needs to do to improve. Maybe he just needs to work on his character pool. Maybe he just needs to practice more. Who knows? This is only the first tournament of the year for him. Maybe he can bounce back in the next one, which I believe is this Friday, as of recording this on Wednesday.
I think it's G5 that's coming up, but yeah, it's just his. It's these Bayos that always get him, and I don't want to be the guy saying ban Bayo, but it's always it seems to be like that's just the one constant in the sea of variables that is his this past PGR season. But hey, I mean this guy has actually gone toe to toe with Zero. Rest in peace. Now that he's no longer competing, but. I'm excited. This is a guy who got second last year at G5 against MKLeo. So, I'm excited to see what he can do this weekend.
Yes, hopefully Ally can pull himself together. I want to see him succeed. We want to see him succeed. We're behind you. Hopefully he will pick it back up. Moving on to CSGO, the boys are back. Cloud9 CSGO hit 2018 hard and fast. They were at the Boston Majors group stage. They're doing it in this weird format where the group stage has a group stage. So you have to go through the first round of groups, go to the actual group stage, and then go through that, and then then you'll get into the bracket stage. But things are looking good for Cloud9 so far. They went 3-0, which is pretty great. They went 16-11 versus Envy on Cash, 16-5 against Sprout on Inferno, and they beat Mouse 16-5 on Train, their best map. So, a really good sign of things to come, I think, for the next group stage. I can't remember who we play, but it's not FaZe, which is the important thing. Hopefully this weekend they come out strong and they continue to get through the group stage to get to the bracket stage. I think people are rating Cloud9 as one of the top teams in the world, which is great to hear. Hopefully they will continue to live up to that. And finally, sorry. You can go.
I for one was really excited to finally see CS:GO back in action. I watched the first game against Envy, and it just felt so good seeing the boys being back and dominating teams that they should be beating. So now that I'm actually kind of learning CSGO, it feels much more exciting to watch our team do better. So I'm glad that we are back in full swing, and now's like the best time of year because CSGO's back on, League's back on, Hearthstone is even going on right now, Rocket League, Smash. So don't forget to watch all of our teams at this time of year because it's super exciting to see everything that's going on, which leads us to another topic of something extremely new and exciting.
Yes, Frozen mentioned a lot of esports, but he forgot probably my favorite one of all. It's Overwatch League, you guys! Oh man, Overwatch League, it's so much fun. So the London Spitfire kicked off their first couple of matches in week 1 of the Overwatch League season, and they crushed it. They went against Florida Mayhem, went 3-1. They dropped the first map, but that's stage jitters. Don't worry about it. And then in the second map, they went 4-0 and defeated the Philadelphia Fusion in a pretty one-sided victory. It was really great. Our boys were on top. Excited to see them play this weekend against the Dallas Fuel and the Los Angeles Valiant, 2 very tough opponents. Please check them out, and if you want to go listen to us talk in more detail about Overwatch League and the London Spitfire, check out the Dogfight. It is specifically tailored to that topic of discussion. So please check that out. There also, if you want more incentive to get into Overwatch League, there's a lot of people from Cloud9 in Overwatch League, mostly from various Overwatch teams, but also Bishu, a fun fact, he was on Cloud9 Tempest, the League of Legends team, I believe is a mid laner. He plays Overwatch now, and he is on the LA Gladiators along with Surefour. So, if you're fans of either of those, please check that out.
I find it funny that there's 2 former NALCS players in Overwatch League with Bishu.
Yeah, Bishu and Gamsu.
And Gamsu.
It's weird. It's weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never would have pictured them being in another game. But I think also, like, Spirit, I think maybe switched over to PUBG. I can't remember if it was Spirit or someone else. I'm pretty sure it's Spirit. But it's just weird seeing, like, a League of Legends player go into another esport. It just feels kind of wrong for some reason.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, but I think that's going to do us. Thanks for sticking around, everybody, for this extremely long, special episode. I also want to, again, thank Nefari0uss for joining us. Please check out his show. He's a very good friend of our show. Please show him some love as well if you are a fan of CLG or curious about CLG and their many teams. So please check them out.
I'm going to give a quick moment of the week to my friend. It's a girlfriend. We went out to get sushi tonight, and she ate a golf ball sized ball of a wasabi for $8. Sickest thing I've ever seen in my life. So I want to give a shout out to her because it was fucking disgusting, and I don't know why she did that on mostly her own accord. And Wolf playing jungle for SKT.
That was also disgusting. I saw that.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I was so surprised.
Hey, man, it's them Bengi strats.
Yeah,
indeed.
Fucked up.
So, I think with that, we should probably close out. It's been on quite a while of us rambling. So, thank you, one and all, for listening to episode 67, I guess, of Bodied, the Cloud9 Fancast. Feel free to tweet questions and feedback to us at C9Bodied or email us at bodiedfancast@gmail.com. We'll try to get questions answered on the next episode, or we'll just answer them through Twitter. We're pretty interactive and pretty on the ball with those kind of things. But yeah, thanks for